May we now invite Mr. Greg Wilson, Worldwide Public Sector's Chief Technology Officer for Government's Microsoft, to deliver the keynote address on maritime big data. Mr. Wilson, please.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody, and thank you for the warm welcome. Delighted to be back in Singapore. I'm Greg Wilson. I work for the global Microsoft team, and therefore I have the lovely job of going around the world and seeing from my perch what everybody's doing to move digital transformation forward and how to deal with sustainability, decarbonisation. But I think, as the Minister said, it's a really exciting time at the moment. And if I was doing this speech a year ago, it would just be on the cusp of where we're at. But over the last year, really, it's all been about AI. So whilst we talk about data and big data and how we can deal with decarbonisation, the shift that we've changed over the last year has been through AI. And really, I would stand in front of you and say, actions meet ambition. AI is helping us do that. And how do we think about it and go forward? Because actually, the unprecedented vertical growth that we've seen with just generative AI, it's not a hype. It's here and people are using it. 100 million users in 2 months, and yet it was 16 years to get 100 million users on the mobile phone. So the pace of change is moving fast. And this is what we're seeing when we think about it. And I really like working with the MPA because they're so innovative and they're driving a lot of capabilities forward. And we saw that with some of the MOUs that they signed today. But when I look at it, where we're going forward, when I have these conversations around the world, whether it's with industries or governments, organizations supporting governments, it's about the AI transformation. But very, very quickly, the convocation goes to, how do I do this? And a year ago, we were talking, why should I do this? Where am I going with this? Now the conversations around, how do I do it? How do I do it faster? How do I not get left behind? In terms of my staff, my capabilities, my infrastructure, what does it mean for cybersecurity? And also, particularly in the public sector, what does it mean for a move to the cloud? And what does that mean for your hybrid infrastructures, particularly in the public sector organizations where we see? And a move from on-premise into the cloud and a mix of both. Because the potential for the business, potential for citizens, potentials for organizations is very real. But when you have that conversation initially on AI, it does very much then go to the data. So what are we seeing when we go around and speak to people and customers about data, particularly big data? And I'm of the group that, yes, there's big data, but we're now in the massive data and beyond. How do we go into the large-scale data? And what does that mean for governments and organizations' data as they move forward? And the data collaboration and the insights that people are getting to drive decisions quicker and faster. Whether that's managing how you manage a port, what it means for shipping, how do you measure your sustainability and decarbonization footprints going forward? But equally, how do you personalize that data? How do you think about your interaction, whether it's in your internal workforce or it's dealing and engaging with citizens? The number one use case for generative AI that we see in government sector is some sort of virtual agent. And people are thinking about how they do a virtual agent, how they engage with their citizens. And then those that are thinking more innovatively are thinking about how do you scale from that and don't just stop. And what's the next steps going forward? Whilst at the same time, providing the protection and security of data in line with whatever the compliance is for the local area, and also protecting it against, unfortunately, a rise of cybercrime that we see, particularly in some areas, phishing, ransomware in particular. So how do we, as we go forward with big data, protect it and think about it in relation to the maritime? Where are the digital solutions where AI that we're seeing are moving forward in the opportunity? And again, the Minister spoke about a few of them as we went forward. Improving efficiency and costs, a big driver around fuel. How do you manage it? Improve energy management. Think about EV options. Maybe there's a reduction of people where you may not need them and you can automate them And think about how you can routinely do your inspections or reduce logistics costs through efficient supply chains. Making things greener, end to end. Big priority for us in Microsoft is making things greener end to end. And in fact, you cannot be a supplier in Microsoft unless you can measure your end-to-end sustainability footprint going forward. But what about the new regulations that are coming out, environmental standards, etc., as well as improving the image of doing what is the right thing for people and the world? And then thinking about how you can optimize your planning and your delivery of your greener shipping, use a metrics analysis from AI and all the IoT sensors going forward for real-time monitoring. And then there's the increased safety and uptime that we're seeing with AI. How do you think about maintenance? And we have CDN, condition-based maintenance going forward, and reducing risk, particularly in environments like dockyards where you need to make it as low as possible. And then better reporting systems and optimization of commercial operations. When you think about those solutions, how do you make things efficient, greener, increase safety and optimized? Then what we're seeing is a drive for transformation. And I consciously put this one at the top, improve workforce engagement. Because this is not a digital technology. This is not about just introducing new computers. This is ultimately changing the way that businesses work, operate, and the processes going forward, and the culture. And how do they engage with new AI and technology? How do they manage it? And how do they do it to get the insights that they want and streamline the workloads for their organizations to deliver innovation in particular? And that's what we're seeing. Those that are embracing AI and embracing it early and thinking about maybe how they're taking it in small steps and then scaling are delivering innovative solutions faster and quicker than those that are not. And they're also thinking about resilient and sustainable operations. But to take this forward, the big bit I say on data is it thinks about the data architecture and how do you create unified data management from your on-prem capabilities, your capabilities in the cloud, maybe your capabilities with a series of cloud providers. How do you get a unified data model to get those insights instead of trying to waste all your time and putting stuff all in the one place? And certainly tools like our Fabric capability is designed to do that, to help you decide which information you want quickly for artificial intelligence going forward. But you can't stand still. One of the questions I keep getting all the time is what technology is coming next? Well, some of this is here, like 5G, but it's growing, it's evolving. We don't fully understand how it's being used as we go forward with AI. How are we doing active shipping demand? Digital twinning in particular, very big at the moment across all industries. And in fact, because I'm here and as I flew in yesterday, I saw the Grand Prix for the Singapore Grand Prix looking over there and the work that we do with Formula One. I always say, what is the most valuable racing car in the Formula One? Well, actually, it's the digital twin. Because that digital twin can be made to practice, work out what the failures are, reset before you do something physical. That's no different than from designing ships and ports and transportation that goes around there. So digital twin is big and using the AI tools to do the analytics. And particularly with some of the organizations we work for, using digital twinning to work out which is the most sustainable materials to build buildings with going forward, as you see that. And then, once they've done it, feeding the model with IoT sensors. Lots of work with geospatial intelligence and how mapping's done, and particularly what that means for the climate as well going forward. And we're seeing more and more in the AR space as well, in industrial metaverse. Some people would say it happened a little bit too early. I've now seen a lot of people coming to industrial metaverse, particularly with the generative AI boom and the developments that we've done going forward. So for me, it's a great time. And I haven't even bothered putting on quantum and stuff like that. And yet there's work going on in those sort of areas. Going back to my previous point, you cannot wait. You must keep moving. Let's not just do policy and concepts and little pilots. Where is the proof of value as opposed to the proof of concept, and scale that proof of value as opposed to doing small scale proof of concepts? And if you can do that, then I think looking at work we've done with the MPA and where Singapore is going, in particular with their port, how ports are transformation in digital and the intelligence ports, Three main areas: streamlining operations, trade facility in Phi Digital. What's Phi Digital, for those who don't understand? The joining of physical and the digital space. Where does it meet in terms of also where do we do the trade? Because it's key for the market at the moment going forward. And you can see some of these solutions. Revenue collection and risk profiling. What it means there: data platforms, automation, autonomous work through intelligence at the edge, and by the edge I mean frontline workers, people in the docks, out on the ships going forward, and processing. Multi-language translation, particularly when you're here, a big one, everybody trying to do the translation. I talk about some of the tools, and the example I give is India. 80% of the Indian population don't speak English, and yet the language that their government operates is in English. And therefore, the introduction of AI translations to the multiplicities, and where they were able to use their own dialects and languages to query through AI modeling into the government, it was translated into English, got the answer they needed, and then retranslated into their dialect, gives the example of some of the power you can bring to communities and what it can mean for addressing digital divide and those that maybe not have the capabilities to go forward. So taking those innovative ways of how can you do that engagement, particularly with multi-shipping, with different languages and crews, etc., going forward. Obviously, border and situational awareness is key, and routes there. Supply chain transparency, a big one on the trades. And I'll also just pull out, for me, the trust in data collaboration and secured identity. So again, going back to that focus of how do we think about security going forward and the people using it. So the theme you should be seeing is cloud, data, AI, people skilling, cybersecurity as we do forward. But actually, what about reducing the carbon footprint, decarbonisation? Again, a lot of work, some of this with the MPA that was discussed already. How do we reduce this footprint going forward? How do we achieve the goals, particularly the 2050 goals that have been set by the chairman? Fuel savings and voyage optimization. Another one, rapid identification of operational bottlenecks and risks. Route planning. Again, this is applicable to the other industries, whether you're planning on roads, how do you manage the port, and not just the shipping lanes, and you're going forward in the risks. And unfortunately, some of the operational risks you can see in certain parts of the world to our shipping going forward. How do we manage that and think of different routes as well? What about underloading? Do you know where you're going? Connection of the ecosystem, again mentioned, not just about the port and the shipping, but importantly making faster decisions, quicker decisions using AI to optimize our shipping, decarbonize it, make it more sustainable and reduce the footprint. On top of that, we've seen a lot of the work and discussions, and I think the work around ammonia fuels is amazing that's been done over here in this country as we go forward. So for me, what does it mean for digitization? Digitization and the tools that we're bringing, I think, is beginning to make the measuring and the monitoring of our carbon footprint more prevalent than what it was in discussion. It's beginning to have people held to account, and some governments around the world are insisting that companies show how this is done, in the EU, for example. And by 2025, they will have to show their metrics as we go forward. So when I take digitization, when I think about the good that it can do, I think about the impact that it can do in particularly maritime and shipping. I think the point that I've mentioned already is actually AI introduction, particularly large language models and natural language where people are communicating with AI, and how you manage that AI, because actually that AI you're managing, you need to communicate with in your language, in my case, English. What am I asking it to do? When it does what I ask it to do I believe it, trust it? The same way as if a colleague was speaking and working with me and I asked them to do the job, are they asking and doing what I wanted them to do? Do I understand it and does it make sense? And what does it mean about how I change my way to doing business? We in Microsoft call this Copilot. How do you think about AI as a co-pilot to your day-to-day business and what you're using technology for? And then depending on the level of risk it depends on how much credence you give to the tool as it begins to learn. We've only just introduced AI. But you think about this in the port and the management of ports, or on shipping and shipping companies, or just organizing customs as you go forward in the ports as well, or managing how you do ship loading and bunking, etc. For the 6 months that the team did the analysis on what was done by Copilot and using generative AI, what we saw on the workforce was an enrichment of employees' experiences. They were able to do things quicker, they were able to focus on what was required on the workplace, and they were also able to do things faster that required processes and analysis of large amounts of data instead of manually going through it. And therefore, they were able to bend the curve on innovation. And a lot of it was done because of the mundane or the initial analysis of Copilot capability was helping them in their day-to-day business. So when you think about AI and technology, the shift that's happening in the business space and in the ports now is digital knowledge is moving from documents into dialogue. What do I mean? That's speaking, that's entering the question, that's having a conversation with the AI to drive things forward to improve productivity. And I think improving productivity across a piece helps us drive the digital agenda. It helps us reduce the carbon footprint that we want going forward. So before I start the next slide, and I didn't want to do a Microsoft pitch, but I want to show you Copilot. But I don't want to show you it as a product. I want you to think about your day-to-day work. How many of you use Word? How many of you use PowerPoint? How many of you use Outlook? How many of you use Teams? Can I have a show of hands of those of you that have got Copilot already as well? So loads of you are using the capabilities but not thinking about this. I'm going to spend a day in meetings today. I'm going to go home to the hotel and I'm going to ask my email, summarize everything that happened today, tell me how many tasks I've got and what are the key points that I should focus and priorities. And by the way, can you put it all in a table for me? So have a look at this and think what this does, not just as an IT to your people, but how does it change the productivity of your business? Because this is the power of generative AI. So what we're going to see in AI is some sort of AI capability into every digital product that is on the marketplace. Whether that's a Microsoft one or you use our technology or other people's technologies to create your own co-pilots. And I think that is digitization going forward. It's using your data, it's harnessing your data in a secure way to deliver your business outcomes. And I summarize again with what it can mean for the maritime industry. About improving efficiency and costs. How do you get quicker to greener shipping, increase safety and uptime? All through using the cloud, AI, data securely, but fundamentally what it means for people and what you do with your teams and yourself, where actions will meet ambition in the digital world going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson, for the engaging keynote address. We'll now have the official opening of Expo at SMW exhibition at Hall 401. The opening will be inaugurated by Dr. Amy Khor, Senior Minister of State, Ministry of Transport and Ministry of Sustainability and the Environment. May I now invite the other VIPs to join Dr. Khor for the official opening. Mr. T.S. Teo, Board Member, Mr. Michael Foon, SSA, Mr. Simon Quigg, President, ASME, Mr. Wilson Ang, Executive Director, ASME, Mr. Angat Banga, Chairman, ASA, Ms. Carmelita Hartoto, Vice Chairman, ASA, Mr. KG Suchiya, ASA SPC Chair and JSA Vice President, Professor Tan Chua Chuan, Chairman, A-Star, Mr. Frederick Chu, CEO, A-Star, Mr. Mark Gainsborough, Chairman, Cetrium, and Mr. Chris Ong, CEO, Cetrium. And we kindly request the rest of the delegates to remain at your seats. Thank you. For identification purposes and entry to all conference sessions and functions, we request that all participants wear name badges at all times. And to delegates, speakers, and attendees of Singapore Maritime Week, you may access Expo at SMW by using your badge. May I also ask you to check out SMW Show Dailies, where you will find SMW event highlights and wealth of market information to explore. I'd also like to take this moment to thank our sponsors and partners who have made this event possible. Their support is greatly appreciated and ensures that we can deliver a first-in-class conference. For gold sponsorship, Advario and PSA. For silver sponsorship, DNV, Envision Energy, Kongsberg, Lloyd's Register, Pacific International Lines, and Vopak Terminals. And for bronze sponsorship, American Eagle Tankers and CMA CGM. We'd also like to thank Trade Estonia for sponsoring our tea breaks. And to all our other sponsors, thank you once again. Morning tea will now be served in the F&B room. We'll now be breaking for network coffee break. Please do return to the conference room and be seated at your respective places by 10:30 a.m. Thank you.